Hello, everyone.
Current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1. Headlines.
What's going on now? Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life. Ayo Myro essay here. Happy New Year. It's the first Monday of the year 2021, 4th January 2021 to be exact. Time check, it's 7:30 a.m. How are you doing today? Good morning, Chetam. Wanze, how are you today?
Happy New Year.
Please do that again and say it with a bit more life. Thank you. This is the first Monday. Cheta, good morning.
I said Happy New Year. You see what I'm saying? You said I'm lifeless.
It was too low. Please, Adenike, let's do it better. Adenike, good morning.
Ha, wow.
Adenike, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Cheta, please, I need
Good morning,
plantain.
better person, because it's not. Eh? No, it's bananas, not. It's bananas I brought.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Right, if you'd like to join the conversation this morning, we'd love for you to share your thoughts with us on the stories we'll be taking you through. You can do so using our WhatsApp platform. That's 0809 444 0981. That's 0809 444 0981. You can also tweet at us at smooth981fm. Use the hashtag freshly pressed 981. What's even better is that you can watch us. Yes, we are in the studio. Well, Adenike is joining us via telephone. So please watch on YouTube. We're streaming live right now. Go onto YouTube, search for Smooth 981 FM Lagos, and you see today's broadcast. Let's go on to our first story for today. Cheta, you have this one. This day reports federal government expects to take delivery of COVID-19 vaccines January ending. They're giving us the assurance that the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines will arrive in the country latest by the end of January. We know that in some parts of the world, they've already started administering these vaccines. And there's been a conversation around when will it get to Africa, then when will it get to Nigeria, almost like the bottom of the pile. Do you think the government is doing enough? And are you rest assured that this will happen by the end of this month?
Once again, Happy New Year to all of you. The person who was speaking was the National Coordinator of the Presidential Task Force on Control of COVID-19, a chap called Dr. Sani Aliyu, and he was speaking in an interview with Arise News. And he promised that the first batch of vaccines will be in the country by the end of January, by the end of this month. And then said that there's a committee that is that has been set up to determine which of the vaccines available will be best for Nigeria. Note that there are certain different types of vaccines. I think about 6 are now available, and one of them, which is the first one that came out, requires temperatures of minus 70 degrees Celsius to retain efficacy. So we can immediately eliminate that one. Important to point out that COVID has killed officially about 1,000, that's 1,400 people in Nigeria officially. So much for the information. Now the analysis. This is my problem with this country. It looks like we are institutionally committed to government by wishful thinking. It's so annoying for me the way we do things here. How can you tell us that the first batch of vaccines will arrive in the country at the end of this month? Bear in mind that today is 4th of January. And in the same breath, you tell us that you aim to vaccinate 20% of the population, which based on our official projections for population is 41.2 million people. And then in the same breath, you still tell us that your committee has not yet selected the vaccine most appropriate for the country. So on 4th of January, you tell me that in 27 days, you will select a vaccine, approach the manufacturing country or company, negotiate a price with them, and pay for 82.4 million doses, because all the vaccines so far are not single dose, they are double dose commodities. So you will do all of that in 27 days. And let us not even start talking of distribution in a country where logistics is nothing short of a miracle. Let me give an example of a serious country. As of the 3rd of December last year, India had already zeroed in on 5 possible candidates. They had eliminated that Pfizer one. Said in our country it no go work because we cannot store so and so million doses, how many that we need at minus 70 degrees. So they had already eliminated that one. First, this is as of 3rd of December, exactly a month ago and a day. In short, that 3rd of December, Ranjit Guleria, who is the director of their COVID response, the equivalent role to Dr. Sani Aliyu, told the media there that they were already in talks with various manufacturers, and crucially, they had started simulations to see how they could distribute and how best they could distribute. Bear in mind, this is a country that participated in clinical trials, so they already had a fair idea of how to get these vaccines to people. As of today, they still haven't gotten the vaccines.
All right. So Cheta, in summary of what you've said, I want to understand, are you saying that the claims by Dr. Sani Aliyu doesn't seem plausible, so it's not possible with regards to the time frame and the obvious barriers?
I said it's government by banter, government by wishful thinking.
So let's, on a very realistic note though, in terms of the analysis, in a minute, so that we go on to our next one, what would you recommend? Because for Nigeria,
who the vaccines for the EU, they started negotiating since. The moment it became clear that these vaccines were about to enter stage 3 clinical trials, they started talking. So we should identify, the first thing we should do, instead of doing this cats before the horse or wishful thing, the first thing we should do is identify which one our committee thinks is best for the country. Once we have identified that, whether it is Pfizer, whether it's Sinotech, whether it's Piontech, whatever is the name, once we identify those ones, we zero in on the manufacturer, we meet them. Okay, we need so and so number of doses of your vaccines in Nigeria. Egole. And those ones will say, well, okay, it is 20 billion naira or whatever it is. Our customer, how much lasts now? And then we talk with them. And by the time we finish talking with them, we make special, we can't bring it through, Papa. So we make special provisions for airlifting this thing into the country in designated batches in 3 different locations.
So how do you know that this hasn't been done by the federal government?
Because the man said it now, it is very clear. They haven't even identified the candidates. It's there. It's there, black and white.
The reason I'm saying this, and I'll move on to the next one, but the reason I'm asking is because the VP has come out to say that there are negotiations, Nigeria. So who are they negotiating with?
The VP didn't say who they are negotiating with.
Yeah, but they're negotiating with the candidate.
With who? Because if they were negotiating with a candidate, he would have been very clear. And it is clear the man. Okay, let me go into the story. Let me quote.
No, don't worry.
The committee is trying to identify the candidate. So if you haven't identified the candidate, which of them are you negotiating with?
All right. Thank you very much. Just to mention and to understand the seriousness of what we're dealing with, as of yesterday, NCDC figures puts the COVID-19 confirmed cases in Nigeria at 90,080, and then deaths at 1,311 with 75,044 discharged. Adenike, let's talk about the National Assembly and INEC, who are clashing over proposed voting rights for child wives. I can't even believe we're having this conversation. You read headlines like this and you're thinking, did I make a mistake? Is this true? So there's a controversy over the planned introduction of underage voting. We talked about this when it first broke in the news, widely alleged to be disguised in a cloak of child wives' rights by the National Assembly Joint Committee on the Independent National Electoral Commission. It has escalated, with INEC insisting on the sacrosanctity of the constitutionally recognized voting age of 18 years. Please break this down for us, Adenike.
Okay, I remember we talked about it last week, and that was where it come to the public knowledge of maybe 2 weeks ago. And now, without a doubt, the conversation has expanded because not only have individuals continued to express their shock at the mere thought of this, but also groups have started to speak up and express their disgust that we are wasting time we do not have. And like you mentioned, is the National Assembly's Joint Committee on the Independent National Electoral Commission. And they are saying that, for every woman married who's under the age of 18, then she should be eligible to voting. And I remember that in the first time to this piece of news, the INEC Commission has stated categorically that INEC does not determine the age for voting, that there is a constitution that determines that age, and the constitution is the one from which INEC derives its validity from, and it is stated there. We also talked about the Child Rights Act that has been domesticated here in the country, and in almost every state, about 25 actually of the 36 states in the country, including the FCT, that have already adopted, enacted, and domesticated the Child Rights Act. And what that invariably means is that the age is 18. You have to be at minimum of 18 years old to be allowed to vote. And whether or not, how that interprets is from the point of registration, voter registration, you must have clocked 18, not that you go and register when you're 17 plus, like we like to call it here, and in the hopes that when it's time for election, you'd have turned 18. Now, more people are adding their voices to this debate, and one is Femi Falana, and he said categorically that the amendment would fail because 25 of the states have domesticated the Child Rights Act, and also that the Electoral Act cannot accommodate child wives voting because it conflicts with the spirit of the Nigerian Constitution. Also responding, as reported by this state newspaper, the chairman on the committee of INEC said the recommendation, however, was a unanimous decision of the joint panel. And I'm quoting him, he's saying the joint committee has proposed that if a lady who is not up to 18 years is married, she should be considered to be mature enough to be eligible to vote. And you cannot shy away from the fact that this is just an undertone of many perverted people who have allowed the conversation of marriage age to die down on several occasions, and now want to use election as a ploy to which they want their underage girls that shouldn't even be married, so a lot of them, to start to vote. Well, the truth about it is, like I mentioned, the Electoral Act, if at all anything has to be done, then it means that the Constitution has to be rectified and the Constitution has to be amended, I beg your pardon, so that it will qualify eligible to vote persons who are married but under the age of 18. And so many people responded. Paul Osuro, former NBA chairman, groups have spoken, and the reaction about it is that persons under the age of 18 are universally considered as children or minors, and therefore they are under parental control and protection. It is almost in everything that we do. And the Child Rights Act, in what's it called, Section 277, defines a child as a person under the age of 18 years, and the age of maturity as the age at which a person attains the age of 18 years. So I'm wondering why this were going on. Well, I don't have to say I wonder. I take that back. I like that the conversation has continued, because before we know what's happening, we'll all just think that the thing has died, and then you'll find out that it has been, somehow a law has been made, and forget that the constitution has not been rectified. You will just find a way how the court will now start to interpret many things. I want this conversation to continue, because you and I know that a lot of these so-called women actually have children in their homes that they are married to, who have better children, and who they now want the constitution, or in this case, INEC, to allow to vote. Well, the implication of allowing such an amendment, Electoral Act, is simply that more of the underage girls will be pushed into early marriages by politicians, and we know that, and they will continue to capitalize on it to prevent poverty and without for their selfish political gains. And you can't say, though the narrative is that it happens in one part of the country, the truth is it is everywhere, even in the south, even in Lagos, even in the west, where we think that it doesn't happen. We think that it happens more in the north, but it happens even in the Middle East, even in the east. So the truth is, nationwide, this conversation has to continue. If we must, we're going to keep talking about it, so that the coconut head will understand that this cannot
You are now reversing it. Mm. 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 All right, thank you very much, Adenike, for that detailed analysis. Chukwemeka and also going back to the first story, says, I agree with Cheta that we have refused to tackle logistics first before we even start negotiating for the vaccine. I wouldn't be surprised they would get the Pfizer version, even when we don't have the storage capacity. And then I think this is Inka. Inka says the Russians were in the country to present their vaccines to us. Why are we not going to them with our chest? They won't even tell us which they are going after, which is irritating. They are yet to even give reasons why the death figures are low here. I had a COVID test recently, and from what I saw, the whole figures are a possible scam. And then Lady Rose says, Happy New Year, thanks a lot. Regarding Dr. Sani's vaccine plan, it's pretty obvious. We are deeply in the begging camp, as always, the cap in hand. Reason for the loopholes, wistfulness in the plan. All right, so dear FP, with apology to hate speech, right, I won't take this comment, but because it is going to be hate speech. Tola from Lagos Island says, good morning, freshly pressed. Happy New Year. Thank you. Child wife voting is an aberration. An underage girl cannot, in the guise of being married, which is in itself against Child Rights Act. The Constitution is clear as to voting age, which is 18 years. This madness, if allowed, would only strengthen the voting power of the northern region where the child marriage is on the rise. Thank you. Let's move on to this the next set of stories, Cheta, because they are linked. And I'll take the headlines from from this day first. Nigeria's debt profile climbs to 32.2 trillion naira, gives us details in terms of statistics. And then debt service gulps 1.99 trillion naira in 9 months, a whopping 1.99 trillion naira. Please, Cheta, take us through the story.
Basically, it's about what is probably going to be our real crisis going forward, which is debt, and it's going to be a multi-year crisis. I think the key figure is the fact that our debt profile is now 32.2 trillion naira. It's rose sharply over the last 5 years. There's no running away from that. As of when President Buhari came to office, our debt profile was just about 10 trillion naira. So it's tripled in the 5 years since he came to power. And note that our debt profile had been wiped clean as of 2003. And this is where I'll repeat what I have said before. Nigeria is not broke. Nigeria is bankrupt. You see, broke is when I just came back from village jolly. Village people are finished dipping hand in my pocket. I have to share money here and there. But I know that the way my company works, as of the middle of this month, SBM doesn't pay 13th months when they're paying your December salaries. They pay your 13th month in the middle of January.
I think that's very wise.
So that because they know that everybody spends, because for a start, we are paid our December salary early to do Christmas shopping. So they know that, by the time it's paid, then the salary structure regularizes again from the end of January. So because I know this, I can plan myself. I have something small that will keep me running until that's mid-January. That's broke. Bankrupt, on the other hand, is if I have a salary of 100K and I pay school fees that's 100K per month, and I pay school fees of 75K per term for each of 4 children. That translates to 300K every 4 months, or 75K per month. And then I still take a loan that I have to service with 19K per month. 75 plus 19 gives us 94. That means that I have spent 94,000 per month on a salary of 100,000. There is no way I can spend because even if I'm eating just agege bread, it will be more than 6,000. That is where Nigeria was as of the middle of last year. Our debt service to revenue ratio has reached 94%. Clearing and you see, this is where this whole debt thing becomes a real problem. Clearing our debts in 2003 improved our rating significantly, and as a result, it allowed capital to move into the country. You can see that Nigeria's GDP per capita, unemployment figures, and overall investment climate shot up after 2003, and it climbed consistently year on year. All these three figures climbed consistently year on year, with except to a blip in 2009 2010, climbed consistently year on year until 2014. Now we are back to where we were in 2003. Heavy debts that we have no hope of repaying. Nay, this thing that we're looking at is a 10-year problem
So
at
what's
the
the
very
way
least.
out? So what's the way out? And I mean, I know you're not an economist, but what's the way out for Nigeria?
We'll talk about that in the next story if we get there.
Okay.
Because the next story that I have here
Okay.
is an example of how we're messing up.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's move on to our next story. End allowances. Adenike, this, I mean, for me, this, I don't know, you're the one who's with the stories that I'm just shaking my head over. Well, the last one, to be fair. Punch reports that end allowances, fresh strike looms in varsities over sharing formula. I think they've gotten so used to staying at home. They look for reasons why they want to continue the strike. But according to this report, the National Association of Academic Technologists has issued a 14-day strike notice to the federal government. The university workers are protesting alleged disparity in the sharing of the 40 billion naira earned allowances released to the 4 university unions. What's really going on here?
That the president spoke and said that they had written to the Minister of Labour and Employment on the 30th of last month, and that they're giving the government 14 working day notice, within which they expect that the clear terms of the sharing must be stipulated. He also said that in November of last year, they had signed a memorandum with the federal government demanding that whatever money will be released, that the government must clearly define what it is to be allocated for in terms of the union. So there are 4 unions under the whole university structure, and that happens to be one of them. Now, it's very easy for all of us to call their bluff, to be upset at them and this and that. But on the flip side, think about it. You stayed at home for so long. You do not understand, that the strike has been called off by the academic staff union, who cannot function on their own, because the truth is, everybody works together. The non-academic staff, the senior academic staff, and now this association of technologists. So we have wondered why the federal government, in its supposed bid to resolving the issues on ground, did not, I repeat again, and finally did not clearly stipulate how these monies should be shared upon disbursement. And this is us believing everything that this Not president has stated. I will not be shocked if tomorrow we read in the newspapers that, Chris Ngige has come out again and has stated that, oh no, yes, we, though the money the 40 billion was disbursed and released and all of that, eventually we now decided that, oh, this is the sharing formula. We're sorry we did not inform that, because without a doubt, everybody is fighting for them, for their own self, for their own needs, for their own interest, and supposedly for the members of their own association. So the earlier Minister of Labour and Employment fixes this mess, the quicker it is and the easier it is for Nigerians to move on to other important issues like vaccine disbursement or distribution, as the case may be. So that's what it is. They are just simply saying that now they will close down schools. If anybody thinks that ASU has called off the strike and the schools will reopen, then let the person tell us. Let us know how effective or how possible it is for schools to reopen when technologists are on strike. And that is, I'm saying verbatim what the president has stated, and his name is Ibeji Wokoma. There was a 2009 agreement, as there is for ASU. I'm sure that we have SANU now, so they'll say there's a 2009 agreement, and it had to be renegotiated. All they're simply asking is that One, the 40 billion that's been disbursed, the clear terms of sharing formula is stipulated. And they're also saying that federal government should release 100 billion naira, because if you go to all universities, you'll discover that laboratories are dilapidated, and they ask the government to release 100 billion to bring laboratories to national standards, and then release another 20 billion every year for the next 5 years for the revamp of laboratories. I'm not sure how possible that is.
So from ASU to NAT, was it that, I mean, this is going in deeper into the conversation. I just wanted to ask, was it that NAT wasn't part of the negotiation process? Why? It is
No, they were
really
not.
painful. Mhm. So why are they just crying out now? Why didn't they do this before ASU called off the strike?
The way it usually works. Okay.
Mm. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm. All right, thank you. A question for Jetta, according to Henry, what will be the impact of this increasing debt to revenue ratio on exchange rate? That's going back to the debt profile, Nigeria's debt profile.
That's another long story that we don't have time for.
Mm.
But this our obsession with exchange rate needs to stop, because it is not constructive. What we should be looking at is increasing productivity. Nigeria is one of the least productive nations on God's green earth. That's a problem. We are not productive. We are a nation. We're not even a nation anyway. We're a country that is set up for consumption. So that is the problem.
Mm.
I mean,
Thank you.
our constitution mentions sharing 26 times, doesn't mention productivity once.
Excellent. All right. This day reports $1.6 billion for power upgrade ready for disbursement, says federal government. Federal government at the weekend assured Nigerians to expect an improvement in the power supply. They said that they are still on course for that 7,000 megawatts. Please, by the end of the year. Go on, Joseph.
Please. This is what gets my goods. Where did this money come from? I mean, it's clearly the World Bank loan. And as one of the texters has rightly commented, we can't see enough capital projects to justify all of the loans that we are taking. This money came from the World Bank loan. They are sharing already. It's more debt. Wouldn't it be more cost effective in the long run for government to step aside, create policies to allow the government, the private sector come in, find money and build their own power networks, then run it efficiently, regulate it, and tax them? That's where you raise money from productive activity.
Yeah.
And we have a template for how you can do this already. GSM. Remember that before the government gave license, government did not put one kobo in building the GSM network to all the infrastructure that they have. Instead, what did government do? Government collected plenty money from them. If I remember, $228 million or something back then. Government collected plenty money from them. Government was only to provide security for their base stations. The rest of it, now then go find money, come build the networks. It's not working till today, despite government's best efforts. Because government has actually, in the last few years, been antagonistic, especially to MTN. But yet the whole thing is still working. All right. We have a template that shows that it can work. Okay. But we are not good one.
All right, thanks. Let me go to YouTube. I didn't realize that we had quite a number of comments on YouTube. Thanks a lot. Kenneth Okoji, going back to the comment on vaccine, said, I can bet you nothing will happen by the end of January. The Nigerian supply chain logistics system is a nightmare. I can authoritatively say this based on my involvement. And then Nii agrees with that. And then Kenneth says something. Is there a rule of thumb that only one association will or can go on strike per time? I think that's an important question to ask.
So what happens is, this is what I wanted to interject when I was speaking. What happens within the university system is that they've built, so the other unions see ASU as arrogant, and ASU themselves haven't exactly been warm and fuzzy to the other unions. So Basically, when ASU is on strike, the rest of them stand back and see whether ASU will get something. And then when ASU gets what they want, at least on paper, then the other unions come out, especially under the aegis of NASU and SANU. And this has been a recurring thing since the 80s. The template hasn't changed. So ASU will still go on strike because the government has no money to meet the agreement. Then the rest will just sit back and wait. Then when everything is sorted, the government makes promises that it will not keep. The rest will go on strike.
Oh, it's
And
a
then,
template. We're playing it again. I don't care. We're out of time, but I'd love for you to touch on this story from this day newspaper or members of the organized private sector expressing concerns and hopes on the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which took off on January 1, 2021. Should actually be dominating our headlines because it's a very important move, especially in the business world, economy-wise. So just touch on one or two things they said. The OPS consists of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, and so on. Please touch on this for us quickly.
I hope at the end of the day is to make for trade to be easier, but the reality about it is that the average SME here, the question is, are you positioned for that competition across the African region? And then there are several factors, institutional factors, there are factors of policy. And like I remember in this article, what's his name, Mudashiru Obasa. No, did I just say Mudashiru Obasa?
Muda Yusuf, yes.
That the commencement is a step in the right direction, but that like you mentioned, that economic integration we all know has several benefits, but then competitiveness is one issue as well as the opportunities that these businesses would avail themselves. Issues of manufacturing, production, agri-processing, and SMEs. The cost of production is high. What does the government intend to do with that in terms of operations, multiple taxation, power, security, transportation, regulation, and all the other things that fall under policy, and as well as exchange rate? Because the truth is, yes, we have an obsession with exchange rate, and the question is, you can't force us, because then what is the standard of our national currency? It just continues to fluctuate. Your value of what it is that you have continues to fluctuate. But I know that one day everything would have to stop and start at a particular point. So this process is a step in the right direction. The trade, liberation will take effect over a period of 10 years. So that tariff will still apply until then, because when people heard this, they just thought there will no longer be tariffs. But it goes beyond just what we see on paper, because we have talked about the free trade movement of people and persons across the African and West African sub-region for a long time, and we know that after 2-3 years in katakata, yam pepe, scatter, something will happen. But it's a step in the right direction, especially because of the effect that COVID-19 has had on businesses in the last 1 and now going on to 2 years. So let's see how far this will go in terms of how Nigerian businesses can better place and position themselves to avail the opportunities that this should provide.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Adenike. Thanks. Thank you, Cheta. Cheta is at Checkstar on Twitter. Adenike is at Adenike Oyetunde on Twitter. We are at Smooth 981 FM. Please use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981 when you send in your message. Next up, it's sports in the locker room 981, and Tega will be here to join us for that show. Stay tuned.
The headlines, the stories, the news.
Thank you very much.
Analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.